All right. All right, well, we might kick off. We're a couple of minutes early, but I don't want to keep everyone waiting too long. Now, what I'll get you to do is just pop yourself on mute just in case there's a bit of feedback. If you've got any questions at all, feel free to ask them throughout. Otherwise, you can always pop them in the chat and then I can see them as well and I can answer them that way too. So we might get started. I recognize some of the names on here, so thank you all for RSVPing to our webinar series. We've got a really great series coming up over the next 5 weeks with lots of different topics, and we're only going 5 weeks at a time just so that we can make sure that the topics that we're going through are relevant and they've got utility for you. And as things change, we're wanting to make sure that we're changing with them, and we're providing you guys with some resources that are actually quite helpful, practical, and you can take away and I guess implement in what you're doing in your day-to-day. So today's topic is just a really quick overview of resilience and how during these really challenging, uncertain times, we can make sure that we're enhancing our own resilience, but also potentially our staff and the people that we work with. And of course, that trickles over to our family and friends and our colleagues as well. So I'm Laura, I'm a psychologist and I look after Me and Work. So Me and Work is an international organisation. We're based here in Australia and in the UK, and we're a group of health professionals that are really committed to individual and organisational performance, and we work with people to deliver comprehensive, outcome-focused consultancy services that make a difference to people. We're more than just your traditional EAP services. We actually look at all of the things that are going on for an organisation and how we can work with individuals, but also an organisation as a whole to put in place a framework to support their staff. So we're really excited to be delivering today's session on resilience, and hopefully you will get something out of it. So I'll click through. Let me know if you can't hear me, see me, or see my slides as I go through. So I guess we need to start by acknowledging that this isn't really a normal time that we're going through. Our vocabulary has changed to include things like social distancing, self-isolation, lockdown. And as our government continues to work to stop the spread of COVID-19, we're making decisions based on our personal safety, the safety of our families and our friends and our workplaces. And working in this new normal does have its challenges. So what does that actually mean for our mental health and our well-being? I wanted to start by outlining that when we're under stress, we all do respond differently, but the impact can be really far-reaching. So our stress response is our emergency reaction system, and it is designed to keep us safe in those emergencies, and it can manifest in different ways for different people. So it could be practical symptoms like having a headache or feeling some tension, or it could be in your thoughts, having difficulty concentrating or making decisions, or you might notice that you're more irritable, or you might engage in behaviours like eating more or eating less. And as I said, everyone's stress response is slightly different and unique. So have a think about how you react to stress and what your early warning signs might be. So we do know that not all stress is considered bad. So some stress can be beneficial to us and to our performance. And what we find is that as our performance increases with that arousal, it gets to a certain point. But when that level of stress is too high, we find that our performance decreases. So recognizing your signs of stress and your symptoms really early before they take over can be quite important. It allows you to jump in and make some decisions and address things before it negatively impacts you. So for many of us, the initial response to stress is to look for those external fixes. We turn to productivity tools that promise to help us manage those pressures, or we look for ways to really help us to alleviate our discomfort. But often these solutions are temporary, they're ineffective, and managing our stress over the long term means cultivating your resilience skills before we're seeking those external solutions so that you can turn changes or stresses and challenges into opportunities. So these skills can be adaptability, a healthy relationship to control, continual learning, having a sense of purpose, knowing how to leverage support and appropriate resources. And we've developed a simple model to cultivate and improve resilience called Thrive. So it stands for time and routine, helpful thinking, reasonable action, increase your connectedness, values, and enjoyment. So there might be factors at the moment that are going on that are beyond our control. So it's about looking at, with time and routine, how we can create some calm and some familiarity by sticking to a schedule. So how can we get up, get dressed, have a plan for our day, stay in work mode during work hours? If possible, looking at having a dedicated, ergonomically sound workspace. For those that are in isolation with children, you might need to think about contingencies when you're online or in phone meetings, for example. The next one is around helpful thinking. So what we know is that risk perception is people's subjective judgments about the likelihood of negative occurrences, so illness or death. These factors can be related to the nature of the risk, like the impacts or the contamination, or it could be the psychological impact of that, so grief or concern for family members, and this contributes significantly to our anxiety. What we know is that how we perceive stress can be just as important to how we handle it as the amount of stress that we're actually experiencing. So shifting your focus from eliminating those day-to-day pressures that you're facing changes your perception of them. So instead of thinking about asking, what I'm feeling anxious because what if I get sick, or what's going to be the impact of that, you could consider saying, how can I use that energy created by feeling stressed about this situation to better prepare for it? Or what can I learn from the stress about my increased workload that will help me to better prioritize my time? So when we experience that anxiety and our stress, it has a direct impact on our behavior. And this model, this helpful thinking model, ABC, shows us how our anxiety is driven by our thoughts, but it can also be challenged by disputing those thoughts to change how we're feeling. Now, being able to separate out what you can and can't control is really essential, particularly given the pandemic that we're going through. So when you're overwhelmed, it's really easy to assume that you can't change your situation. There are many things that might always be outside of our control, like other people's behavior or weather or a financial crisis or the pandemic that we're going through, or how many people can gather. These are things that are outside our control at the moment. I'd encourage you to ask yourself, how close am I to the root cause or the decision maker in these circumstances? Do I have the skills? Do I have the information? Do I have the resources to enable me to change or influence this situation? And make a note mentally or in written form of what is actually in and outside of your control. For anything that you categorize that's outside of your control, recognize that you do have the ability to, choose how you interpret or frame that. So just as an example, in our current climate, your reasonable action within your control is just around following reliable advice and precautions, which, we are all doing at the moment. The I stands for increasing your connectedness. So what we know is that when we're socially connected, good deeds are reciprocated and people help. They trust people, they rely on people, and these relationships not only help us feel emotionally supported, but they also play a role in our overall health and well-being and supporting that. So being connected to others can be a protective factor against anxiety and depression. Looking at your strong ties with your family and your friends and your colleagues and the community, that can really give you a sense of happiness and security and a sense of purpose. So consider who it is that you could be reaching out to. How can you keep in touch? The next one is values. So the next framework looks at your values, and values are those things that you believe are really important to you in the way that you live and you work. They determine your priorities, and they're the measures that you use to tell if your life is turning out the way that you want it to. So consider what your values are, and also potentially consider what your workplace values are. Does your workplace have clear values that really enhance your own and provide that sense of safety? Consider how you're spending your time and making your decisions, and how your values connect with those of your workplace, because it can, as I said, that sense of community can be quite strong in these times. And if your workplace has values that resonate with you, that can be a safe place for you to make sure that your behaviours are in line with your values. And the E stands for enjoyment. So I guess more than ever, it's really important at the moment to be keeping up those healthy habits, potentially even adding in some good practices like meditation into your daily routine to help support your mental health. So staying hydrated, getting some fresh air and exercise if you can. If you're at home, maybe that means stepping up and walking away from that laptop if you can, making sure that you're eating healthy foods and we're not going to the fridge just because we're at home more than we were, and remembering that your team and your colleagues and your family will also take cues from each other. So making sure that you're being a good role model for those around you is really critical. So looking at this model and the Thrive model, consider this as a bit of your own resilience plan, and just have a little pause and think about how you rate yourself out of 10 in those different categories. Give yourself some honest scores. You might find that at the moment you're doing really well with your enjoyment, but actually your thinking is not great at the moment, and so maybe there are some things that you could be working on in that particular category. So consider how you're going and how you're tracking with those. And what we've got is a bit of a template here, so you can actually rate yourself out of 10 now. What do I need to do to get to a 10, and what are the actual practical actions that I'm going to put in place for those different categories to make sure that I'm actually seeing a difference in my resilience. So that's the model that I wanted to talk you guys through at the moment. It's short and sweet, but it allows you to have a bit of a framework and a bit of a template for what are we doing in this current pandemic, and what are some of the strategies that we can put in place to make sure that our resilience is in check when all those other things around us are potentially out of our control. So I hope it's been helpful. I've popped my email address there just in case you wanted to get in touch. So please feel free to email me if you've got any questions, or if you wanted to ask questions now, you're more than welcome to. Otherwise, that's what I wanted to go through today. So our session next week, we've got a leading epidemiologist to talk to you about, I guess, again, a little bit more on the pandemic and how you can be supporting your staff through that. So she's there to provide us with some really great insights. So we will be here same time on Tuesday, and providing you with some other relevant information. We are, of course, open to topic suggestions if you're finding that there are particular needs within your staff or within the community that you're wanting to know about from a clinical perspective. So please feel free to send us some ideas if you've got things that you would like to know a little bit more about. Otherwise, we'll keep sending you through our schedule of what we're going through, and we can go from there. So thank you everyone for today. Thank you for being a part of it.
Thank you.
That's all right.